Right, let's go back to having a good old rant and moan about the state of the nation, shall we? Because what we have found out is council tax is soaring. Now, Sir Keir Starmer said, no, council tax isn't going to go up under me. Well, it's very easy now for him to point the finger of blame and say, well, do you know what? It's up to local authorities, isn't it? And if they decide to put council tax up, that's nothing to do with central government. But he did also, during the King's speech, decide to devolve a load of extra competences to local authorities and say, right, you need to be in charge of all adult social care. Oh, guess what? You've also got to house these 200 randos who have come over on a boat, put them in a hotel, put them in some sort of properties you've got hanging about the place. And all the while, local councils are equally facing things such as increasing national insurance for employers' payments. You know, they're going to have to now pay extra for their binnies and their street sweepers and people who fill potholes. They're having to pay more in energy bills, water bills, just like the rest of us. So is it a surprise that most council tax bills are now set to soar by an inflation-busting 5% this year? The typical Band D cost in England is going to go up by £109. Of 384 authorities covered by the government's cap, so the government does say, OK, you can't go up more than this amount. Set at 4.99%, apart from in a few dire circumstances, 293 are going to be imposing as much as they are allowed to impose. And yet, what are you getting for it? If you are a resident of Birmingham, what you're getting for it is the blight of unemptied bins, streets littered with funky, stinking, nasty rubbish, massive rats that look like they've been, I don't know, like blown up from that 1980s classic Honey, I Blew Up the Kids, you know, sniffing around doorsteps, chewing on old takeaway boxes, dirty nappies, disease. It's like some sort of horrible picture of Victorian Britain. Look at that. There are sofas chucked in there as well. There's always someone who has to chuck a sofa into the mix, isn't there? Right, let's speak now to Shimeon Lee, who's a policy analyst at Taxpayers Alliance. Shimeon, I kind of feel like never before has so little been done for so much when it comes to people paying council tax in this country.
I mean, you're absolutely right. This is a story we've seen take place time and time again. Council tax go up and the level of services go down. I mean, if you look at the numbers for this upcoming year, 9 in 10 councils are going to increase council tax by the maximum amount allowed. And if you look at the long-term trend of council tax, we see it's actually almost tripled since 2000. So if you ask people, are you getting 3 times the level of services? I think many people would disagree, and the people of Birmingham would certainly disagree.
Yeah, so what is actually going on here? Why are so many council taxes really facing so much strain? Is it about people being paid too much? Is there far too much money being paid on woke staff? Is it because actually just costs of living have gone up generally and that's impacting on local councils? Is it also, I mean, I understand that some councils have been hit so hard by this sort of gender pay order that was put out to make sure that women are paid as much as men, and huge backdated compensation really hitting local councils' budgets hard. What is at the root of all of this?
Well, I mean, in the case of Birmingham, it's a very, very clear case of incompetence and mismanagement. I mean, we recently had a commissioner's report into what's going on, and it's the findings were extremely stark. It put the blame squarely at the feet of the councils. I mean, if you look at what's happening in Birmingham, they've had a gender pay settlement of hundreds of millions of pounds, and on top of that, they've had failed implementation of a new IT system that's also going to cost hundreds of millions of pounds. So in many cases, it's incompetence at the level of councillors, but also we see councils speculating on property investments that haven't done well in in the post-COVID era. And of course, in many cases, it's just overcomplicating something that should be very simple, bin collections. We recently had a piece of research come out that showed that people in this country are being forced to dig through rubbish, essentially to sort their waste into up to 10 different types of containers. And so these are clear reasons why the services have deteriorated. And of course, there's plenty of blame to go around at the national level as well. You mentioned earlier about how the government has raised the punishing tax on employers, national insurance tax, which is going to hit councils as well. It's the government passing the buck to councils and trying to claw back some of the money through higher national insurance rates.
But why don't heads roll when it comes to this? Because, you know, you always see people employed by local authorities on hugely inflated salaries. A lot of people being paid more than the Prime Minister. And yet they don't ever seem to be held accountable. When we find out that when audits are done and councils are put into special measures, and you find out that, one local firm has got some sort of multi-million-pound contract to take one kid to school in a specially adapted vehicle, you think, where is the auditing? Why aren't people fired? Is there corruption going on at local council level, adding to the flagrant waste? I mean, why on earth are councils not being held more accountable? And even more still, not only are they not being held more accountable, a lot of them have decided not even to have elections in a couple of weeks' time.
Well, it's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, far too little attention is being paid to what's going on at the council level. In fact, a lot of the services that we interact with day to day actually occurs at the council level. Bin collections is a major one. If you look at the state of bin collections, for example, we see about 42 councils across the UK are actually looking to reduce bin collections. So what's going on in Birmingham could soon be happening all across this country. If you look at Bristol Council, they're looking at reducing bin collections to as little as once a month. So if you can imagine that once a month, people are going to have their bins going.
Why are they going after bin collections? Because you think of all the things that they might want to cut when it comes to the nonsense that some local councils spend our cash money on. Bin collections is exactly the thing you don't want to cut, because what is clear, we live in highly densely populated urban areas. There are more people being crammed into our country than ever before. The population is absolutely swollen in recent years due to the uncontrolled levels of mass immigration. You have people who, I hate to say it, don't seem to have the same sort of social etiquette when it comes to disposal of waste in this country, because they might come from countries where just chucking something on the street is fair game. And then these councils turn around and go, oh, do you know what? Yeah, we might not bother collecting the rubbish only once a month. Why do that?
Well, in many cases, it's easier to just cut services than actually put in place some sort of reform at the council level. And there's also part of the reason is because of the environmental agenda. If you look at Wales, for example, the government in Wales are actually forcing local councils to split the rubbish up into different kinds of bins. So that's one major reason for that as well.
I mean, I don't know where to begin on this. Is there any mechanism in place where local authorities get audited, where someone do they have to go into special measures before someone peeks under the bonnet and says, right, lads, how are you spending the money? Is this all sensible? Because at the end of the day, it's our money. And like you said, most of the things we interact with on a daily basis, whether it's potholes in the street, whether it's local services, local schools, whatever it may be, is usually administered at local authority or council level. And yet it seems to me no one ever goes in there and says, what is going on? Is this money being spent effectively? Is there a system in place to make sure that these entities are audited?
Well, I think certainly when there's financial difficulties, when councils declare bankruptcy, the government will take a look at it. But there's insufficient mechanisms, certainly, to make sure that councils don't get to that point of bankruptcy before somebody actually has to step in. And we at the Taxpayers Alliance have done a lot of work looking into local councils, looking into what exactly is going on at the local council level, and helping people sort of get informed about what's going on at the council level. Because at the end of the day, it's people who are going to have to pay these council taxes, and people who will have to hold local government to account through elections.
Oh, well, elections, a lot of them have been cancelled in May. Hurrah! Great for democracy. What sort of things have you found out? If you're going to give me sort of the headlines of Taxpayers Alliance research and some of the more ghoulish things you found out about local councils.
I mean, every year we do this big release called the Town Hall Rich List, where we look at the top highest remunerated people in councils, council executives. And of course, this year we're going to have another release that's probably going to show a massive increase in the number of councillors receiving over £100,000. We have many, many people in these councils receiving more than the Prime Minister, if you can believe it, just in terms of their salary. And that's even before you add on the massive pensions.
Right, yeah, exactly. That's a ticking time bomb waiting to go off. Aren't you lucky if you're a public servant? I mean, actually now, our bloated public sector, 51% of people actually basically taking from taxes, not contributing to taxes. Fewer than half of us are working in the private sector and actually paying for this country to operate. Shimeon Lee, policy analyst at the Taxpayers Alliance, thank you ever so much.